aitah for still not accepting my dad getting remarried and having another kid. Within 3 years of my mom dying, so I moved out on my 18th birthday. I turned 18 at 12:03 a.m. By 12:15, I was already gone. I didn't take much, just a duffel bag, my mom's locket, and the house key I'd never use again. Dad didn't even hear me leave. Or maybe he did, and he just didn't care. It was strange, the silence of that night. The same house that once echoed with laughter now felt like a mausoleum. My mother's perfume had long faded from the curtains, replaced by the artificial sweetness of her. My father's new wife, Emily. Mom had been dead 3 years. 3 years. And somehow, that was enough time for him to not only remarry but also start over. A new wife, a new baby, a new life that didn't have space for the old one. For me, the first time I realized I was being replaced was the day Emily moved her things into the house. She didn't even wait a week after the wedding. Her laughter was loud, too loud, like she wanted to fill every empty space my mother left behind. And Dad, he let her. He replaced Mom's photos with family portraits that didn't even feel like ours. He repainted the walls, sold the car Mom loved, even changed the family dog's name because it confused the baby. That one broke me more than anything. Even the dog had to forget her. I used to think grief brought people closer, but in our house, it built walls. Dad threw himself into building a new life. I threw myself into holding on to the old one. Whenever I tried to talk about Mom, he'd sigh and say, "You need to let the past go, Lily. We're moving forward. Moving forward." That's what he called it. But to me, it felt like betrayal. Emily tried to connect with me. She'd leave notes on my door. "Family dinner tonight, want to help decorate the nursery." I ignored them all, until one day she crossed the line. I came home from school early and found her in Mom's old office, a room Dad had promised would stay untouched. Emily was painting over the walls, humming softly, a bucket of pale yellow next to her. "What are you doing?" I asked. She jumped, then smiled. "Oh, Lily, I'm turning this into a nursery. It'll be perfect for the baby." My stomach dropped. "You can't." This was Mom's space. Her smile faded, replaced by something colder. "Honey, your mom's gone, and this house needs life again, life." That's what she called it, painting over my mother's handwriting on the wall, where she used to write little notes to herself. When I told Dad, he didn't even look surprised. Emily told me, "I think it's a good idea. That room's been collecting dust for years." That night, I ripped the doorknob off the nursery door so no one could go in again. Dad grounded me. After that, the distance grew. He stopped knocking before entering my room. He started saying our family when he meant his new one. And when the baby was born, everything changed. He named her Grace, my mother's middle name. I remember standing in the hospital room staring at that tiny child, feeling something heavy in my chest, something I couldn't name. Emily looked at me with a kind of triumph, like she'd finally won. "Do you want to hold her?" she asked. I shook my head. I couldn't, because in that moment I realized that my mother's name, the only part of her that was still mine, now belonged to someone else. Someone who would grow up never knowing her. I lasted 3 more months. Every night felt like living in someone else's story. Every smile from my dad felt like a lie he was forcing himself to believe. On the eve of my 18th birthday, I packed my things. The next morning, when he came into my room with a cupcake and a forced smile, he found the bed empty. Just a note that said, "You moved on, Dad. Now it's my turn." He tried calling for weeks. I didn't answer. Then, one day, he stopped. I thought that was the end of it, until 6 months later when I got a letter in the mail. It wasn't from him. It was from Emily. The handwriting was elegant, cold, precise. "Your father's sick. He wants to see you before it's too late." I almost threw it away. But curiosity, or maybe guilt, made me go. When I arrived, the house looked smaller, quieter. Emily opened the door, holding baby Grace on her hip. She didn't look surprised to see me. "He's upstairs," she said softly. "He doesn't have much time." I climbed the stairs, my legs shaking. Dad looked frail, older than I remembered. His eyes met mine, filled with something between sorrow and relief. "Lily," he whispered, "I wanted to tell you I didn't marry Emily because I stopped loving your mom. I married her because I couldn't bear the house without someone in it." I didn't say anything. He reached out, his hand trembling. I thought if I filled the silence, I could forget the pain. "And did you?" I asked. He smiled faintly. "No, I just gave it a new name. He died that night." I didn't cry at the funeral, not because I didn't care, but because I realized I'd already lost him 3 years ago. After everyone left, Emily approached me. "He wanted you to have this," she said, handing me a small box. Inside was my mother's locket, the one she wore every day. But there was something new inside, a folded photograph. It was of my dad holding baby Grace, standing beside my mother. A photo I'd never seen before. On the back, written in his handwriting, were the words, "One family, 2 lives, don't let the past steal the future." It's been a year since then. I still can't forgive him. Not for moving on so fast. Not for pretending pain could be painted over. But sometimes, when I hear Grace laugh in the background of Emily's calls, a laugh that sounds hauntingly like my mother's, I realize maybe forgiveness isn't about forgetting. Maybe it's about finally stopping the cycle of loss before it becomes your whole life. Part 2. The truth that doesn't stay buried. It's been 5 years since my father's death. 5 years since I left that house, and I promised myself I would never step back into that town again. And for a while, I didn't. I built a life somewhere new. Small apartment, college, job, people who didn't know my story. They didn't know about Emily or Grace or the locket I still couldn't bring myself to wear. I thought I had finally outrun the past. But betrayal has a strange way of finding you again, quietly, like it never left. The first sign came on a rainy morning in October. I was late for work, running out the door, when I nearly tripped over a brown envelope sitting at my doorstep. No return address. Just my name, Lily Collins. In handwriting I recognized immediately. Emily's. For a moment I thought about throwing it away. Then curiosity, or maybe dread, won. Inside was a single piece of paper, neatly folded. A letter. "Lily, if you're reading this, it means I'm gone. I know you probably hate me, but I need you to know the truth before Grace grows up hearing only my side. There are things your father never told you about your mother's death, things that might change how you remember both of them." I froze. The letter was dated a week earlier, and at the bottom, beneath her signature, were 6 words that felt like ice against my skin. "I didn't marry him for love." I sat there for an hour just staring at the page. The words blurred. My mind raced. I called the number I still had saved under Dad's house. No answer. I called again. This time, a soft voice answered. "Hello." It was Grace. "Grace," I breathed. "It's Lily." A pause. Then, "Lily? Mom said you'd call one day. Is your mom there?" "No, she's gone." Her voice broke. "She died last week. She left me a box with your name on it." I drove through the night to the old house I swore I'd never see again. The neighborhood looked smaller, emptier. The paint was peeling from the fences. The trees that once looked like giants now seemed like ghosts. Grace met me at the door. She was 8 now. Tall, quiet, with my mother's same gray blue eyes. She handed me the box without a word. Then she asked, softly, "Was my mom a bad person?" I didn't know what to say. "No," I whispered. "She was complicated." When I opened the box later that night, my hands were shaking. Inside were photographs, letters, and, at the very bottom, a drive. On it was a single video file titled "Before You Judge." I hesitated before pressing play. Then Emily's face appeared on the screen. Her hair was shorter, her eyes tired. She looked nothing like the confident woman I'd grown up resenting. "Lily," she began, "I know you've hated me for years. I don't blame you. But your father and we didn't happen the way you think." She took a breath. "When your mom was alive, I worked with her. We were both in the same department. She was my superior. We were friends once until she found out your dad and I had been seeing each other behind her back." My stomach turned. "I thought he loved me," she said, her voice trembling. But after she confronted him, he ended things. He begged her not to tell anyone. A week later, she died in that car accident. She looked straight into the camera, but it wasn't an accident. The room spun. I paused the video, my heart pounding. When I pressed play again, her voice had changed. Quieter, heavier. "Your dad told me to keep quiet. He said if I loved him, I'd protect his reputation. He said no one would believe me anyway. I lived with that secret for years. But after he died, I found something. Your mother's last voicemail. She recorded it minutes before the crash." Emily looked away from the camera as she played the audio. My mother's voice came through, panicked, shaky. "Mark, I know what you did. You said you'd end it, but she called the house again. You lied to me. I'm not going to stay silent anymore. You can't just erase me. Then, the sound of tires screeching. A crash. Silence. When the video ended, I couldn't breathe. Everything I had believed about my father, the grief, the remarriage, the pain, it all twisted into something darker. He hadn't moved on from my mother. He had buried her and built a new life on top of her grave. I stayed in that house for days after that, going through the box. There were old photos, my mother smiling, my father beside her, Emily in the background. Letters between my father and a lawyer, sealed court files, insurance claims, and one note from Emily, dated the year after Mom's death. If you don't tell her the truth, I will. Grace found me crying on the floor. She didn't ask what was wrong. Maybe she already knew. She sat next to me, quietly holding the locket that once belonged to my mom. Lily, she said softly, was my mom part of the lie too? I looked at her, at this child who carried pieces of both of them, the victims and the villains all tangled together, and I realized she didn't deserve to carry their sins. No, I whispered. She tried to fix it. She just couldn't. Before I left, I visited my parents' graves. They were side by side, matching headstones, same style, same inscription. Together forever. I stood there a long time, rain soaking through my coat. Then I took out the locket, opened it, and placed it on the ground between their graves. Inside was a single photograph, my mother holding me as a baby, smiling like she still believed the world was kind. You didn't deserve this, I whispered. None of us did. When I drove away, Grace was standing in the doorway, watching me. I rolled down the window. What will you do now? She called out. Something my parents never could, I said. Tell the truth. That night, I posted the video online. The one Emily left for me. Within hours, it spread like wildfire. The comments flooded in, sympathy, outrage, disbelief. But among them was one that made my blood run cold. No username, no profile picture, just 3 words. You missed something. Attached was a file. A second video. The thumbnail showed my father, alive, sitting in his office, speaking directly into the camera. And the title read, Confession, for Lily. Part 3. The confession that changed everything. I should have deleted it. Every instinct told me not to open that file. But curiosity and fear are the same poison. They burn slow, and by the time you feel it, it's too late. I clicked. The video began with static, faint flickering. Then my father's face appeared. He looked older than I remembered, older even than the last time I saw him in that hospital bed. There were dark circles under his eyes, the kind that come from sleepless nights or a guilty conscience. He was sitting at his desk, his office, I realized. The one he used to forbid me from entering as a kid. Behind him, on the shelf, was the same photo of my mother, the one had kept even after marrying Emily. He stared into the camera for a long moment before speaking. If you're watching this, Lily, it means Emily couldn't do it. He sighed. A long, defeated sound. I never wanted you to find out this way, but you deserve to know the truth before the world decides it for you. My throat tightened. Your mother didn't die because of me, he said, but she was supposed to. For a few seconds, the room felt like it was collapsing. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. He continued, voice trembling. It started years before you were born. Your mother and I were working with a private research firm. It wasn't just accounting or management like we told people. It was government-funded medical work, gene therapy, classified trials. The program's goal was to develop a treatment for degenerative disorders. But there were other motives. The investors wanted results faster than science could ethically allow. He rubbed his face, his wedding ring clinking against the desk. Your mother found out they were experimenting on children, abandoned ones. She threatened to expose it. My blood went cold. I begged her not to. I told her we'd lose everything. The house, the money, the future we'd planned. But she didn't care. She said some truths had to burn everything else down. The day she died, she wasn't driving to work. She was driving to meet a reporter. He leaned closer to the camera. His eyes were red. They made it look like an accident, but it wasn't me. It was them. My hands were shaking. I paused the video, then rewound it just to hear him say it again. They made it look like an accident. I couldn't stop them, he continued. But I stayed quiet because they threatened you. They told me if I went public, you'd end up like her. A tear slipped down his face. So I married Emily, not because I loved her, but because she was part of them. She worked for the same firm. They said if I kept up the image, if I stayed useful, you'd be safe. And for years you were. He looked away then, almost ashamed. But Emily found out what they did to your mother. She wanted out too. She thought having another child might keep her safe, a child with my blood. They never hurt their own. That's why Grace exists. She was her insurance. The video flickered and the sound crackled. He looked terrified now, like someone was just off camera. If this ever reaches you, Lily, you need to find the files your mother hid. They'll be under her maiden name, Evelyn Carter. There's a man who'll help you. His name is Dr. Samuel Kent. He worked with us. He disappeared before the crash. Find him. Don't trust anyone else. Especially not. The sound cut. Static. Then, a flash of motion. My father's face twisted in fear. He turned toward the door. Who's there? A faint voice reply, almost too quiet to hear. A woman's voice. You shouldn't have told her. Then, darkness. I sat frozen in my chair, staring at the screen long after it ended. I replayed it 3 times, hoping it would make sense. It didn't. The woman's voice at the end, I knew it. I knew it. It wasn't Emily. It wasn't my mother. It was someone else. I spent the next few days digging through everything my father left behind. His notebooks, his USBs, his old files. And then I found it. A folder hidden inside one of Emily's old emails. Subject line. Thastrstor. Inside were dozens of documents. Clinical trials, patient reports, birth records. One of the files made my blood run cold. Patient ID, 47B. Subject name, Grace Collins origin. Gene sample. Subject AE. Carter maternal host, Emily Warren. I blinked. Read it again. And again. Grace wasn't Emily's biological child. She was my mother's. Everything hit me at once. Emily's strange attachment to me. Her insistence on keeping Grace close. My father's quiet guilt. Grace wasn't a new beginning. She was the continuation of an experiment that never ended. A child born from the genetic remnants of my mother's DNA. The final test of Thastrstor. I drove back to the house that night. Grace was asleep when I arrived, clutching a stuffed bear. I sat beside her, watching her chest rise and fall. Her little hand curled around that bear's arm, and I realized she looked exactly like Mom. Not like Emily. Not like Dad. Like her. I whispered, "You're her, aren't you?" That's why he couldn't let go. For the first time, I understood why my father's guilt had destroyed him. He didn't just lose his wife. He tried to recreate her. The next morning, I found another envelope taped to my car. No return address again. Inside was a single line, printed neatly on a white card. You've gone too far, Lily. Don't make the same mistake she did. No signature. But beneath it was the seal from the same research firm, Seraph Labs. That was 2 months ago. Since then, my apartment's been broken into twice. Emails deleted. Phone calls cut mid-sentence. Someone doesn't want me to keep digging, but I can't stop, because there's one more file I haven't opened yet. One labeled simply E47. Termination report. I don't know what's inside, but something tells me it's not about my mother. It's about me. Now I can't sleep without checking the door twice. Every night, I see headlights outside my window, and sometimes I swear I hear my mother's voice, soft, close, whispering from somewhere in the dark, "They'll never let you go, Lily." To be continued.